Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
I can't stop scratching my downtown. Yeah, but I'm not itching to go downtown and tell a receptionist I'm here to talk about my downtown. Some things you'd rather type than say out loud.
There's no question too embarrassing for Amazon Health AI. Chat your symptoms and get virtual care 24/7. Healthcare just got less painful.
I didn't think the pain from the shingles rash would affect simple, everyday tasks like bathing, getting dressed, or even walking around. I was wrong. Though not everyone at risk will develop it, 99% of people over the age of 50 already have the virus that causes shingles, and it could reactivate at any time. I developed it, and the blistering rash lasted for weeks. Don't learn the hard way, like I did. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
Hello and welcome to the program UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about UFO reports from Missouri. That's correct, UFO reports from Missouri. Found these over on NUFORC. Pretty cool selection over there. This first one's dated October 5th, 2025, 11:30 p.m. It says duration 10 minutes, observers 2 military. Location Caruthersville, Missouri. Shaped triangle, color very black, size huge. Viewed from land, direction from viewer east, directly overhead, 90 degrees. It was heading west. Approximately 500 to 1,000 feet was the closest distance, and speed extremely slow. Characteristics: lights on object, possible abduction, missing time, marks found on body afterward, animals reacted. Sounds pretty serious. A triangular craft flew silently and very slowly at an altitude of approximately 500 feet. It had white lights at each corner and a semi-pulsating red light in the center. While visiting my hometown for my high school reunion, I was standing outside my sister's house talking with my brother-in-law when we saw a red pulsing light approaching from the east. Because I had previously witnessed strange triangular craft over my hometown when I was younger, I joked with him. I wondered if the UFOs were coming to welcome me home. As the craft got closer, I could only see the red pulsing light in the center. I told my brother-in-law that based on my previous experiences with these triangular craft, I believed that when it passes directly overhead, it would activate 3 white lights at its corners. Almost on cue, the craft illuminated the 3 corner lights while the red light continued glowing in the center. My brother-in-law became excited because we observed 7 or 8 of these craft flying at the exact same heading and displaying the exact same lighting pattern. For me, however, it was at least the 50th time I had seen this exact type of craft perform the same maneuver. Now listen, this sounds to me like this person is definitely a repeat experiencer. The craft was so dark that its outline was visible against the night sky. As I mentioned earlier, this is not my first sighting. I first began seeing these craft over Caruthersville in late 2013, but I remained largely silent. The only exception was when I contacted NUFORC in early 2014, although I do not believe I was taken seriously, probably because I was a teenager and they assumed I was joking. My silence was largely motivated by a series of events that occurred in early 2015 when I was 17 years old. These events seemed orchestrated to intimidate both me and my family. One of them permanently changed the way I spoke publicly about UFOs. I enlisted in the Missouri National Guard in July of 2014 and attended monthly drill weekends afterward. I was outspoken about what my friends and I were witnessing, but we were always dismissed as stoner teens. On November 9th, 2014, I returned home from drill, still wearing my uniform. Some people at a local bar thanked me for my service and offered to buy me a drink. I accepted. I was 17 years old after all. I had 2 shots of Fireball whiskey and a cheeseburger. After being the center of attention for a while, I began telling people about the strange things my friends and I had been seeing, objects that appeared to come from the river and move through the sky. It was the first time an adult had actually listened, so I took the opportunity to tell my story. That night, after leaving the bar, I knew I could not go to my mother's house because she did not know I had spent the day at a bar. Instead, I went to my older brother's house. I lay down on the couch, still in uniform, vomited a little on the floor, and fell asleep. I think maybe a little too much Fireball whiskey. What felt like only a couple of hours later, I woke up to a trembling sensation in the air, accompanied by a faint, continuous humming sound. I got up and walked to the front door. When I looked outside, I saw two pale men wearing black suits and ties walking toward the house. Behind them hovered a strange craft only a few inches to about 1 foot above the ground. It resembled an extremely advanced helicopter without rotors. It was much smaller than a conventional helicopter, just large enough to hold perhaps 3 average-sized people. It was still completely dark outside. I panicked and tried to slam the door shut, but they were already on the porch. I turned and attempted to run to my brother. When I entered the kitchen, he was standing there, apparently heading toward the side door, but he was completely frozen. He did not move or even blink. The moment I ran into him, I felt the same frozen sensation take over my body. I lost control of my movements, walked backward, and sat down on the couch. The two pale men, who looked as though they could have been brothers, stood side by side in the doorway. Their facial features were recognizable as human, yet distinctly abnormal. I could identify their noses and ears, but everything else appeared subtly distorted. They communicated with me, although their lips never moved. I heard their voices as though they were speaking directly into my mind. They said, "You cannot tell people what you saw." One of them produced a device and photographed me twice. I know this because he showed me the images after taking them. Then he said, "If you tell people what you saw, we will have to come to you again." Afterward, they turned and walked out the door. When the door closed, I immediately regained control of my body and jumped up in a panic. My brother was still standing in the kitchen and appeared completely unaware that anything unusual had occurred. By then it was daylight outside. I told my brother everything that had happened, but he insisted he had neither seen nor heard anything and suggested that I had imagined it. The following month, while attending monthly drill training with my unit in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, I received an angry text from my mother asking what I had gotten myself into and why the police were at her house looking for me. I was shocked because I knew I had done nothing wrong. I called the local police department and they told me that they had not sent anyone to my address. I then contacted the Penobscot County Sheriff's Office and they also confirmed that they had not sent deputies to my mother's house. When I called back my mother, I asked what the officers had said. She replied, "They asked where you were, when you left, and when you were coming back." I asked whether she had seen a patrol car and whether the men had badges and uniforms. She answered, "There were 2 of them. They wore black suits, showed me a badge, and left in a black car." I instructed her that if they ever returned, she should not open the door and should call 911 immediately. After these events, I completely shut down. I stopped looking at the night sky and stopped discussing UFOs, even with friends who had witnessed unidentified aerial phenomena alongside me. I remained silent out of fear. However, after continuing to see these craft over my rural hometown and hearing credible witness blowers come forward, helping to reduce the stigma surrounding the subject, I felt compelled to speak publicly once again. There's also a man named Blank. Now, I'm not going to say this guy's name because his missing person case, I don't want to add any trauma for the family. Anyway, it says he disappeared around this guy's hometown, and he says, "I believe this disappearance may..."
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Somehow be connected to the phenomena that I and many others have witnessed in the skies above the area. Wow, that is quite a story. Now, they did do an investigation on this. It says NUFORC investigators note the witness is a 28-year-old Missouri resident. On April 7th, 2026, I spoke with him extensively by telephone regarding a UFO encounter and possible contact with non-human entities that allegedly occurred on November 9th, 2014. During our conversation, it became clear that he considers himself an ongoing experiencer and described numerous contact experiences throughout his life. 2 incidences form the primary basis of this report. The most recent occurred on October 5th, 2025 at 11:30 p.m. It involved a very large black triangular craft flying silently at an altitude of approximately 500 feet or lower. The object displayed a pulsing red light in the center of its underside and white lights at each of the 3 corners. According to the witness, the corner lights remained off until the craft passed directly overhead. He believes this was an intentional interaction similar to previous encounters. The incident occurred when the witness was 17 years old, shortly after returning home from Army National Guard basic training. After drinking heavily at a local bar, he went to his brother's house and fell asleep. He later awoke to a low humming sound and described the sensation that the air was disturbed. When he looked outside, he observed a small, hovering, saucer-like craft and 2 humanoid beings standing near the front door. He described them as men in black. Although he never invited them inside, he recalled that they somehow entered the house. When he attempted to call his brother, he found him completely frozen and unable to respond. The beings communicated telepathically and warned him, "If you tell anyone what you saw, we will have to come and see you again." One of the beings used an unknown device to record his image and showed him the resulting photograph. The next thing the witness remembered was that the entire night had passed. I asked whether he could sketch the appearance of the men in black. Instead, he suggested watching the 2018 science fiction film Alien Code, stating that the beings looked exactly like the characters portrayed there. The figures wore classic black suits, white shirts, black ties, and black hats. Their faces appeared humanoid, but their foreheads and cheekbones were noticeably exaggerated. Interestingly, the film's premise involves beings from another dimension attempting to invade Earth. Conclusion. Based on the available information and current investigative resources, it is not possible at this time to either verify or disprove the witnesses' reported experiences. James Clarkson, NUFORC investigator, May 5th, 2026. Wow, that is really something. This reminds me of one of those abduction stories that you read about in mainline media, but here we found it listed on NUFORC. What a cool story. I'd really would like to hear a little more from this young guy. It'd be cool if they could get him into some kind of hypnotic regression or something, maybe some kind of one-to-one session with somebody who specializes in this kind of stuff. All the way around, a very good story. This sighting is dated October 5th, 2025, 9:19 p.m. local time. Duration approximately 1 hour, ongoing at the time of the report. Interesting. Joplin, Missouri. Shape changing, multiple colors. It says rainbow. Size between the size of a minivan and a small private jet. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer directly overhead. Heading west to east, south to north, and landing. Wow. Closest distance approximately 200 feet. Speed varied from hovering to more than 200 miles per hour. Characteristics: lights on object, emitted other objects, changed color, made a sound, aircraft nearby, landed, marks found on body afterward, animals reacted. So another one of these really involved sightings, encounters I should say. Our location continues to experience close encounters of the first and second kinds, and we now suspect encounters of the third kind. Sightings of simple orb-shaped craft and other unexplained occurrences began more than 2 weeks ago before this report. As I write this, our dog and cats are panicking because of an unseen vehicle and a low humming sound echoing over our house. For the past 3 nights, everyone in the house except one person who never goes outside has witnessed various craft. They appeared as disc orbs and swirling lights, with one even landing in the field across from our home before disappearing. As the object descended, it cast a deep orange light beyond the trees. It hovered just above the ground for a moment before shooting back into the sky as a bright white light. The following night, sheriff's deputies and unmarked trucks blocked every road near our home, and we were effectively locked down for several hours. We contacted the sheriff's department the following day, but they claimed they had no record of the roads ever being closed. Boy, that's strange. Maybe imposters? I don't know. About a week ago, we were outside stargazing because we were interested in the possibility that UFOs or UAPs might actually be present. Note that statement right there. A lot of times it seems like when people become curious, there's that second of opportunity for these things to appear. We soon noticed unusual distortions of light on a nearby hillside and began hearing strange sounds, including distant voices, clicking noises, and whispers. As whatever was producing the sounds came closer, the noises gradually faded while the lights shimmered in an unusual way. At that point, both X and I noticed what appeared to be a face in the trees. We experienced what felt like contact with several entities, although I still cannot say whether there was an extraterrestrial aspect involved. We spoke aloud, asking them to reveal themselves and assuring them we meant no harm. We then saw movement in the treetops. A bright light began pulsing slowly from the ground, resembling an electrical plasma arc, or one of the desktop plasma lamps. A silent, brilliant pulse occurred about every 10 seconds, repeating approximately 6 times before stopping. After that, we neither saw nor heard anything else in the backyard. Today, I became suddenly ill, feeling as though I had the flu, although I cannot explain how I have become sick so quickly. As I struggled with nausea, the house began shaking, and the animals once again panicked as though a tornado were approaching. The nausea became so intense that I vomited. Everyone in our home, including another person who stayed with us this week, has been experiencing symptoms resembling mild radiation exposure. This possibility was deeply disturbing. I guess so. After recovering somewhat, I went outside to investigate. For reasons I cannot explain, our neighbors did not seem to notice anything unusual. However, for approximately 5 minutes, we observed what appeared to be a transparent triangular object roughly 200 feet above our house. Gradually, it became more difficult to see until it completely disappeared. Last night, we were stargazing again, but before we even had our equipment set up, an unusual display of lights began across the sky. At first, we observed numerous steady lights traveling in straight lines, moving slowly from north to west and from west to east. They appeared to be approximately 200 feet above the ground, with one object spaced roughly every other mile. At one point, we were simultaneously observing 12 separate objects. We recorded video of another object that suddenly became extremely bright. As soon as we began filming, it changed from a bright, solid yellow light with a dim halo into what appeared to resemble an aircraft. However, its lighting pattern was unlike any conventional aircraft. It displayed 2 lights that blinked alternately from left to right and then right to left along the same axis. A deep green light was visible near the tail, while a dim yellow glow underneath created what looked like a spotlight shining toward the ground. Unfortunately, the video quality was poor because we lacked better equipment. We decided not to submit the footage because it begins only after we activated the camera, making it easy to dismiss or debunk. Shortly afterward, we observed several aircraft profiles that I immediately identified as helicopters flying at high altitude and relatively low speed. So we have the sighting of these multiple UFOs, and then all of a sudden we have helicopters in the area. We then noticed a deep green blue light moving at a moderate speed across the sky in front of one helicopter. The helicopter followed the object for approximately 10 seconds before making a wide arcing maneuver that appeared to be an attempt to obtain a better view. The unidentified craft then accelerated toward the north-northwest faster than we could visually track it. The helicopters eventually flew west, and after some time all activity ceased. Because local authorities denied that anything unusual occurred, I felt submitting this report was my only remaining option in case these events are significant. I am currently in EMT medical training, and we also conduct paranormal investigations. Experiences like this had never seriously crossed our minds until now. Well, maybe if they're doing paranormal investigations,
And we're live on match day as Doug reaches for a buffalo wing. He's got it! Oh, and he's gone for a can of Pepsi too! What a finish! There's no doubt about it. It just tastes better. Match days deserve Pepsi.
got something going on here with the hitchhiker effect. I have to wonder about that. I would say to be very, very careful with these paranormal investigation stuff, because you could possibly be summoning something that you really don't want to be in the same room with. We then noticed a deep green-blue light moving on at a moderate speed across the sky in front of one helicopter. The helicopter followed the object for approximately 10 seconds before making a wide-arcing maneuver that appeared to be an attempt to obtain a better view. The unidentified craft then accelerated toward the north-northwest faster than we could visually track it. The helicopters eventually flew west, and after some time all activity ceased. The following morning, my roommate noticed a sore, itchy spot on his thigh, while I discovered a similar mark on my hand. Interestingly, both locations correspond to areas where I had previously administered flu shots during my medical training. Don't get me started on this. I became mildly alarmed, and that same day, both of us developed symptoms similar to those experienced after receiving a flu vaccination. Neither of us could remember sleeping or dreaming after going to bed, although my roommate recalled having a brief nightmare involving tall men. Wow. So they've had flu shots, they've had reactions to flu shots, and they're saying that they had the same kind of reactions and stuff, even though they hadn't had flu shots. But the roommate remembers a nightmare involving tall men. Well, it sounds like maybe you got a shot from somewhere else, huh? Regardless of whether these events involve extraterrestrials, what I cannot ignore is that actual aircraft appeared to be flying low enough to rattle our windows while dropping what looked like fireballs. I have no explanation for what we witnessed. Soon after, I developed welts and raised spots on my right arm, the same arm that had been sore, and my roommate developed similar welts. I identified them as hives, but I cannot explain how both of us developed hives on the same day, despite being at different locations at the time as my roommate was attending church. That is some weird stuff. That is some very, very weird stuff right there. Interesting that this individual is also into the paranormal investigative stuff. Hopefully, if they have any more experiences, they'll go ahead and give us another report out of Joplin, Missouri. We'll finish up with one last one here. This last sighting that we're looking at happened on June 6, 2016, so about 10 years ago. 10:30 a.m. local time. Duration approximately 5 minutes. Observers 1, Cedar Creek, Missouri. Shape, it says cigar, and then it says spindle-shaped, or haze around object. Spindle-shaped object with no wings, no sound, and no vapor trail observed in a clear daytime sky. On Monday, June 6, 2016, from approximately 10:30 a.m. until 10:35 a.m., under a clear blue sky with bright sunshine and no noticeable haze. Boy, those days are rare, aren't they? I witnessed a strange silvery gray aircraft, or what appeared to be one, flying over my property. I stood in my garden and watched it for just under 5 minutes as it seemed to glide or slip silently through the air. I was not wearing a watch, but I checked the time a few minutes after returning to the house. The craft was long, thin, and more spindle-shaped than cigar-shaped, with tapered ends. It appeared to have no wings or any visible means of propulsion. I did notice what looked like a shadowy line or slightly darker area running vertically about 2/3 of the way from the front of the craft. Other than that, I should emphasize that this was nothing more than a faint shadow-like area, not a clearly defined stripe or color change, almost more a suggestion than an actual marking. There were no visible markings, protrusions, lights, decorations, or variations in color anywhere on the object. It appeared simply long, smooth, and silver. I watched it as it entered my view from the southeast and kept it in sight until it disappeared into the northwest. During the entire observation, I never heard a sound, not even the slightest hint of one, nor did I observe any change in its shape that might have suggested previously hidden wings or other structures becoming visible as its angles changed. The craft appeared to be at relatively high altitude. Holding my arm fully extended toward the object, I could almost cover it with one finger, although it was slightly longer than a single finger's width and not quite as long as 2 fingers' widths. It appeared to measure approximately 1 inch at arm's length. positioned roughly at 11 o'clock position in the sky, assuming the horizon was at 9 o'clock and straight overhead was 12 o'clock. I observed the object as it approached, passed overhead, and moved away. At no point did I see anything resembling wings or any other external structures. It appeared completely smooth. However, I do not wish to mislead anyone. I never observed the craft directly from the front or rear, which might have revealed its cross-sectional shape. My observations were made entirely from below and slightly to one side. Even so, the spindle appeared to lengthen and then shorten as it traveled across the sky, indicating that I viewed it from slightly different angles during its flight. Well, it may have also been shape-shifting. There were two particularly unusual aspects of this object that I find difficult to describe beyond its complete lack of sound, wings, visible features, or vapor trail. The first was that it seemed to possess a very faint luminosity that did not appear to result from reflected sunlight. Somehow it looked both dull silver gray and softly illuminated from within at the same time. It reminded me of a glow-in-the-dark object with only a faint charge, except the light was completely colorless and diffuse. The closest comparison I can think of would be placing a light source behind a sheet of mylar, although there was no brighter center or obvious light source. The glow seemed to originate from the object's surface rather than from inside it. The second unusual characteristic was the entire craft appeared to be surrounded by a perfectly circular halo or some distance away from its surface. It resembled the corona sometimes seen around a full moon, except this halo was dark rather than bright and so faint that it was almost invisible. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, or that I was seeing ordinary eye floaters. I rubbed my eyes deliberately, looked at other parts of the sky, but I could only see the phenomena while looking directly at the craft. Once I convinced myself that it was genuinely there, I briefly wondered whether it might be an extremely fast-spinning rotor system similar to helicopter blades. However, I believe I would have heard something if that had been the case, especially considering how enormous such a rotor would need to be. The craft itself appeared to measure about 1 inch at arm's length. The circular halo surrounding it appeared closer to 2 inches by the same comparison, far too large in my opinion to represent helicopter blades. Furthermore, the halo appeared completely separate from the craft, with no visible connection between the two. I wish I could describe this phenomenon more clearly, but despite having spent considerable time on Air Force bases and at airports around the world, I have never encountered anything remotely like it. Well, sounds to me like we're listening to an expert opinion here. Actually, I should correct myself. This was the 4th time I have observed this same craft over the past several years. Here again, it sounds to me like we have another repeat experiencer. Unfortunately, I cannot remember the exact dates of the earlier sightings, but I believe the first occurred approximately 5 or 6 years earlier. I observed it twice again before this most recent sighting. With the exception of the third event, every sighting occurred on a clear, sunny day during late spring or early summer, and each time the object appeared to travel from the east or southeast toward the west or northwest. I live in a very rural area near a national forest and keep goats. During the first 2 sightings, I was outside tending the goats and had an excellent view of the craft. The third sighting was less memorable because I was occupied with something too important to stop doing, allowing me only brief glances at the object. I do remember that it was also a pleasant day, although I cannot recall the season or the direction in which the craft was traveling. You may wonder why I'm reporting this now instead of after the earlier sightings. The only explanation I can offer is that I consider myself a rational person. Over the intervening years, I have repeatedly tried to convince myself that I had merely seen an unfamiliar aircraft with an unusual design. My husband reinforced this belief by suggesting that perhaps I simply could not see the wings because of the viewing angle, sunlight in my eyes, or some similar explanation. He also suggested that surrounding sounds might have masked the engine noise, but that the aircraft's direction of travel prevented me from hearing it immediately, or that I had simply remembered the event incorrectly. Yeah, you imagined it. Gradually, I began to wonder whether I had misremembered everything. That changed today. This time, I watched the object long enough to evaluate every possibility while it was still there. I questioned myself repeatedly. Does it have wings? No. Does it leave a vapor trail? No. Does it make any sound? No. And so on. I am satisfied that my observations are accurate. Exactly what I witnessed, however, I leave for others to determine. What you witnessed was a UFO. No doubt in my mind about that. What another very cool sighting from Missouri. Very detailed. This lady talks about how she's seen this cigar spindle-shaped craft now 4 different times. It seems clear to me that it's, for some reason, trying to make itself known to her. This only deepens the mystery as far as I'm concerned. Hope you enjoyed the program. If you did, don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe. It doesn't cost a dime. Until next time, this is UFO Warning.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat, emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month. Even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending. 0 tears.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Over and out.